Mr. Chairman, YouTube is live.
Great. Roll call, please.
Senator Driscoll. Here. Senator Guru.
Here. Senator
Larson.
Excused.
Senator Smith.
Here.
And Chairman Salzar.
Here. So members of the committee, we have a few bills here. They are referrals. First one is Senate File 14, Wyoming Immigration Library Program. Is there anyone here to speak to the referral to this bill? Anyone? Committee, Senator Guru.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On Senate File 14, Wyoming Imagination Library Program, there's an appropriation of $39,000. I move that we accept the appropriation.
Discussion? Okay. Public comment? Anyone wish to speak to this bill? Senate File 14? Anyone? I'll close public comment. Any discussion on this? Okay, then can you take the roll?
Senator Driscoll.
Aye.
Senator Guru.
Aye.
Senator Smith.
No.
And Chairman Salzar.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, 3 ayes, 1 no, and 1 excused.
The next bill for consideration is Senate File 41, Federal Acts, Legal Actions Authorized. Again, is there anyone here to speak from any agency? Any public comment? Senator Guru, do you have any comments on this?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I don't have any comments on Senate File 41.
It's okay.
Federal Acts, Legal Actions Authorized from the Joint Agriculture, State Public Lands, and Water Resources Interim Committee, but I will move to approve the appropriation of $75,000.
Okay, there's a motion to approve the $75,000. Is there a second?
Oh, 75 million. Oh, I was wondering if I could get your eyes out of you on that. Okay, 75.
That changed your idea, big spender?
I was
Well,
wondering how much
Senator
it's gonna-
Smith suggested that, so no, 75 million.
We're on
Just kidding.
Senate File 41.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Driscoll.
I'm going to be a no vote. If it's 75,000, I can handle it. A 75 million, I do not think is appropriate. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to address the motion?
I'll be voting with Senator Driscoll unless somebody has some compelling arguments.
Anyone again from the
Talk about this.
from the public who wishes to address this issue? I'll close public comment. Roll call.
Senator Driscoll.
No.
Senator Guru.
Yes, aye.
Senator Larson.
Aye.
Senator Smith.
No.
And Chairman Salzar.
No.
Mr. Chairman, 2 ayes and 3 noes.
Okay, that does not pass. Senate File 81, tax exemption property owned by the state. Is there anyone here who would like to address Senate File 81? Senator Hicks, welcome.
Mr. President, or Mr. Vice President, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I didn't come down here to testify on any of these, but as a member of the Joint Ag, Public Lands and Water Resources Committee, I thought I'd come down here. Mr. Chairman, the question I have is this was similar to an inquiry we had last Friday about if there's not an appropriations, but it has fiscal impact, should it be referred to this committee or not? Because there's not an appropriation in here. By passing this property tax exemption on state lands, it just reduces the potential property tax collected. So there's not an appropriation from any fund, there's a reduction But, Mr. Chairman, I can't explain what the bill is and why we felt that there was a need from it in the Joint Ag Committee. Senator Larson was there, and anything that I'm deficient on, I'm sure he can fill in the blank. So, Mr. Chairman, I think most of the members that are aware, there was a Supreme Court ruling that came out of some state institutional lands associated with a business lease that the state had done in Uranus County. It went to the Supreme Court, and they said that didn't meet the primary purpose of what those lands were authorized for, and so consequently, they have to pay property taxes on those. Pretty broad-reaching implications. I think the thing that the Joint Ag Committee took a look at this, and from a standpoint, anytime we increase revenues off of these, they go towards the beneficiaries. In this particular case, those revenues go back to the state hospital. Those lands were granted to the state as part of our act of admission. And so we felt that it just was appropriate to continue that operation, to allow any of these business entities operating on there would still be under those state leases. There wouldn't be property taxes required to be paid to the state to those local entities. So, Mr. Chairman, that's what the bill addresses. I try to answer any direct questions from the committee if there is any.
Any questions? Senator Larson.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I think during discussion, we also had some discussion about not necessarily range and grazing permits and that sort of stuff, but I think this State Lands and Investment Board told us that in some industrial cases that they are in contract, I think, obligated to pay the property taxes. Is that not what you heard?
Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I do believe that discussion occurred, and so I think that's accurate.
Any other questions? Senator Smith?
Senator Hicks, I was a little bit fuzzy on what your opinion is of this bill. So basically, it's the tax that the state pays goes back to the state, is what I heard you basically say, correct?
So the way that works is these based on the Supreme Court ruling, that the state would now have to pay property taxes on those state sections. And so any entity, and you can look at the impact of the school foundation program, it's be about $1.9 million, and then the ad valorem taxes for your cities, counties, towns, special districts. If we pass this legislation, it would basically revert back to the status quo, and the state would not be paying property taxes on those state lands. So I don't know if that answers your question.
So that was what's the economic impact? Oh, Chair, Mr. Chair. What's the economic impact? How much money will the counties be losing?
So, Mr. Chairman,
Senator Hicks.
again, if you look at the fiscal note, it's about 1.9 million. Maybe Senator Driscoll can.
Senator Driscoll.
Mr. Chairman, I'm SLIB liaison. I'll elaborate. They aren't losing money, they'd be gaining 1.9 million, but it is a wild swag. When they were at the meeting, they actually kind of did the estimate based on grazing and ag. And the truth is, one compressor station will take care of about 500 school sections as far as assessed valuation. And so their first pass was to pass this on to the ag lessee because they've got them all on record easily. This is a very complicated subject. I think it's going to take a reasonable amount of time to sort it out. I don't think anybody argues that maybe we need to look at it if you're putting private business on it that competes with other private business. But a knee-jerk reaction to it, which is kind of what the court lined us up for, is not. I'm going to support this, but I do think we've got to take a look at it going forward. And we really hit at the SLIB meeting that not even the SLIB board, nobody had a base understanding of what was coming at us. Just the Supreme Court ruling comes down, you're handed this deal, and you don't have a choice but to act. And I think we need to give them breathing room at a bare minimum. So I'll be in support of it.
Sure, I will say that in the ruling by the Supreme Court, they said that the legislature has the ability to remedy this issue if we are so inclined. I think Senator Driscoll's right. This is tremendous complicated. We passed this bill that establishes the status quo, so what's going on right now. As of today.
Senator Larson?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So I'm kind of worried that it does not take us to status quo. I'm kind of wondering if we don't need an amendment that those properties that we're paying, like businesses that are on state land, do we say they don't have to now? That's what worries me, I guess.
Senator Driscoll?
Mr. Chairman, they aren't paying as a whole unless it's specified in their lease, which would still hold. But if it's in the lease, it's a contractual agreement because it's not there. But for the others, no, it will give us some time.
Senator Hicks?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think this illustrates the issue, but the really bigger question is it going to be a policy of the Senate that anything that has a fiscal impact to an agency and not an appropriation comes to the Appropriations Committee? If we go with the decision that we discussed last Friday when we passed and voted on a similar piece of legislation, I think the determination from the floor was is it did not have to go to the Appropriations Committee if it just had a fiscal impact. So I think, and the greater discussion is Mr. Chairman, maybe your committee needs to make a decision as to whether we refer these kind of bills to your committee or not.
I'll make a motion coming up on that.
Well, I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just saying.
I am, it was coming anyway.
Okay, other questions?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
No, other questions? Okay, any comments from the public? Any public comment? No public comment? Okay, I'll close public comment. Committee, what would you like to do?
Pass the bill.
Second.
Second?
Move.
Discussion? Any discussion? Roll call.
Senator Driscoll.
Aye.
Senator Grew.
Aye.
Senator Larson.
Aye.
Senator Smith.
Aye.
And Chairman Salzar.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, 5 ayes. to
Okay,
pass.
great. Senate File 81. I'm not sure on the, who should be taking this on the floor, because this is a very complex issue. You all think about it and let me know. Senate File 99, Game and Fish Property Tax Exemption. Any agency here? Anyone here to discuss Senate File 99? If so, please come up. Hello.
Good afternoon. Angie Bruce, the Director of Game and Fish. A lot of friendly faces here and a few new ones for me as well, so thank you. Regarding Senate File 99, just want to briefly talk about the impact and how much this is impact to the department. Currently, we're, I believe, the only state agency that pays property taxes on our game and fish state land. And this would allow for $540,000 to remain within the game and fish to be put back on the land for conservation practices. And the bill also is very specific that it exempts the Game and Fish Commission properties except for those that are appraised with ag value. So what does that mean? That really means our lands, our WHMAs, our wildlife habitat management areas, and our feed grounds. Those would continue to be assessed as ag value and provide taxes to the counties. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Senator Landon.
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Glad to be here to represent this bill. I'm a brand-new chairman on the Travel, Recreation, Wildlife Committee. This was one that I really appreciate the director and her department working with our former committee. This was an interim bill that came through. You know, really, it's a pretty important policy discussion for us to have, I think. Our sportsmen out across the state and from other places invest their dollars in the licensing of, you know, hunting big game and fishing in our waters. That money, I'd like to see it go to wildlife management. And some of it is going to pay some taxes back to us. And so needless to say, it has a a lot of support on the two committees. It was unanimous on both. And so I commend it to you. There is a fiscal impact, we know that, but that's money that can go to wildlife management and fisheries management in Wyoming.
Okay, great, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Any other discussion? Any questions? Anyone from the public who'd like to speak to this? Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Andy Schwartz, representing the Wyoming Outdoor Council. And while I agree with all the testimony I've heard, and we are in support of the bill, I'm mostly a little confused, much in the same way Senator Hicks was, in terms of a re-referral on a bill where there is no appropriation. And in terms of my job tracking bills and attending committee meetings, it would be helpful to understand what the re-referral policy will be. When I look at the fiscal note, I think it's fine. I think it's very appropriate that Game and Fish has that added $540,000 to deal with wildlife management. Clarification would be appreciated. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Senator Guru?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree, and we're going to work on getting that answer, because with these two bills that we're just doing one, it's not each bill, we just had one a minute ago. So you're not alone, just to make sure that we're doing it right. But I, along with everyone else, I support the bill, support the concept. We want to make sure that this money gets back into Game and Fish where it should be. So, but it's just a question of making sure we're doing it right. So, thank you.
Okay, other comments? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Robert Short, Converse County Commissioner and Vice President of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. We also support this bill, but we have a little concern over the housing exemption, specifically because no other agencies in the state enjoy a housing exemption associated with a tax in each county. And we are a bit concerned that it opens the door for every other entity who wishes to have a specific exemption associated with their particular situation be granted. That's the concern of the County Commissioners Association insofar as this bill is. Other than that, we are very much in support of it.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your comments. Any questions? Any questions? Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments from the public? How are you? There you go.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, it's nice to see you. Jess Johnson with the Wyoming Wildlife Federation. We are very much in support of this bill. And, as someone who has had to call game wardens in all times of the day, their housing being open to the public 24/7 is something that is pretty unique to this state agency, and is a part that I think that makes them a very high public use in that sense. So we're very much in support of this bill. I stand with the chairman that spoke before here as well, that we want to see these dollars put on the ground for wildlife management and making sure that we keep our iconic large game, trophy game, small game, non-game, and all game in between as iconic as they are. This department does an exceptional job.
Great. Thank you. Any questions? Any questions? Thank you again. Appreciate it. Anyone else like to comment on this before we move on? Okay, I'll close public testimony.
Question, no.
Oh, Senator Guru, yes.
Just a question, Director Bruce, as long as you're here. The good commissioner brought up a question. How many game warden housing, how many housing units do you have in your portfolio?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, do you have the exact game warden? I know the taxes that we pay on the game warden houses is roughly $130,000 a year, and 48 game warden houses in the state.
Thank you. Okay, with that, what's the pleasure of the committee? Move the bill, is there a second? Second, any discussion? Any discussion? Roll call?
How much,
Oh, yes.
Mr. Chair, so how much revenue, and I tried to pull it up, how much revenue will the state be losing if we go with the housing exemption for game and fish? 130, is that what they said? Okay, okay. That was my only question.
143.
143? Okay.
143.
Thank you.
Any other questions before the vote? Okay, roll call.
Senator Driscoll.
Aye.
Senator Guru. Senator Larson.
Aye.
Senator Smith.
Aye.
And Chairman Salzar.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, 5 ayes do pass.
Okay, great. And the last bill on our docket is Senate File 34. Is there anyone here to address school finance routine, major maintenance? Senator Landon, Chairman Landon.
Mr. Chairman, thanks again. Appreciate you taking a look at this one. This is the work of your Select Committee on School Facilities. The senator behind me could have sat up here too. He served right alongside me this past interim. I served as your vice chairman of that committee, and we took up the usual list of things that we do, and one of those is taking a hard look at our maintenance of more than 25 million square foot of buildings out across. We have nearly 400 of those buildings that we take care of. So we passed along this policy consideration because it's been around for a while. We've done that the last 2 or 3 years to encourage our legislature to take a look at what kind of investment we're making in the maintenance of our schools. This school finance and major maintenance bill modifies this K-12 formula in 2 ways. It modifies the allowable educational square footage from 115% to 135%. That goes to the fact that there's more square footage out there, Mr. Chairman, than what is allowable under our formula. Many schools that built those schools before the state took over, prior to 2000, for example, one high school in your neck of the woods was a great example. It had way too much square footage. So it was our feeling on the select committee that we need to take care of the square footage that is out there. The school districts have made the adjustment as best they can these past 20 years. We still have excess square footage out there, and it's really up to the state to take care of the buildings that we have. So that's what that does. The second piece of that is the cost replacement value multiplier for major maintenance. We're suggesting in this bill that we move from 2 percentage points to 2.5 percentage points. Well, both of those adjustments, Mr. Chairman, do have appropriations to them. The adjustment to the first modification that I explained to you is a $38 million appropriation. And the second one is a $5.5 million appropriation. And you'll see those in the bill, back on pages 6 and 7. So that's the gist of it. I tried to hurry through it for you, Mr. Chairman, but the bottom line is we're suggesting that we bolster what we're doing in terms of major maintenance on our buildings out there. The thought that I had as a longtime member of that school facilities committee is, what exactly are we going to hand over to our kids' generation? Are we going to hand them buildings that are well taken care of, or are we going to hand them over and say, they need a paint job, they need a new roof, and a couple of these are about ready to fall down. So, good luck with that. We never got around to it. If we want these buildings to last 75 years as opposed to 50 years, this is how we do it. And we all know how expensive building new schools is. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's the gist of the bill.
Any questions? Senator Driscoll.
Mr. Chairman, we're moving from 115 to 135%. Does this square footage allocation include enhancements when these folks put stuff on? Does it include enhancements?
You know, I'll have to find that out for you, Senator, Mr. Chairman. Some of that is likely to be an enhancement along the way at some point. For the most part, all of those districts out there have adjusted their square footage to the best of their ability. You might remember just about every year we bring to you some dollars in a line item for demolition of buildings. You know, we up in your neck of the woods, we demolished a building that really needed to be gotten rid of because of the square footage. So some of that may be an enhancement, but most of it is just that carry forward of too many square footages that they had years ago.
Other questions?
Mr.
Senator?
Chairman,
Oh, yes.
I guess I have a hard time with enhancements that are built in with us picking up all the maintenance and them not picking it up out of their dollars. You know, where it encourages them to build bigger and bigger facilities outside, and I get the square footage. I also am somewhat confused, and I sat on facilities at one time. I watched them tear down an absolutely wonderful ag facility in the southeast and forced them to tear it down because it was over square footage. Are we allowing some to keep it and some others to not?
Mr. Chairman, good questions, Senator. You know, through the years, it hasn't been perfect, and, you know, we've stubbed our toe here and there with what the agency has been able to do or not been able to do, and where the commission comes in and where the select committee comes in. And then, of course, we come to the legislature where we all have a crack at this. But no, I think those are legitimate concerns. It was the feeling of the select committee that that the districts have pretty much right-sized as much as they can. Now, you have for example, up in Campbell County, we have a high school that is way over on square footage, and that's because way back when, they built hallways that are about double as wide as any other school in the state. That's not the district's fault. And not a lot we can do with situations like that. But no, I think if we're rebuilding, Senator, there are pretty big and solid restrictions that we put on it now. I mean, you're not going to get to put extra square footage on those buildings,
Senator Larson?
not unless you pay for it yourself.
Mr. Chairman, I too have concerns that some schools built bigger than they probably should have. And I don't think we should be paying for that extra, so I don't know how you would deal with that if you had suggestions. But you mentioned that there were some schools built prior to when the state took over building schools, is that correct? And what date would that be? But is there any way we could tie that date into it also?
Mr. Chairman, that's a great question, Senator Larson. Well stated. And about 1995, I think, is when we went to a statewide system. It was at that point in time. I want to say, you know, schools off the top of my head that I think of that were built probably bigger than we would build them today: Evanston High School, Sheridan High School. I believe at one time, even Powell High School was one of those. These are the schools that we're talking about when we talk about recognizing the extra square footage. Now, for the most part, what that does, that formula, simply puts more money into the major maintenance basket. And that's what we're suggesting, is that we step up what we're putting back into those buildings. Some of them are getting some age, and we'd like to see them last a little bit longer than what the projection point is right now.
Who else? Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman. The pros from Dover just hit the door. To back there, Mr. Chairman, Del McCombie's here and the whole team, so I think you got some backup now.
You know, Mr. Chairman, it's about time they got here.
You did an
I
excellent
think it was
job.
I'll tell
totally
you
my
what,
fault.
I was fending them off.
Well
You're
done.
doing great.
Would you like to come up, Director? Senator Hicks, I apologize, please.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, having the privilege to serve under Senator Landon, I can tell you, he's got a tremendous amount of institutional knowledge in this area. He does a wonderful job. But on particular to this, when it came to the committee, I was a no vote on this, and I'd like to explain to the committee why. I think it's appropriate at this point in time to look at these numbers. I made a motion to adopt them as a one-time expenditure because they biennialize. So that $38 million you see biennializes to $76 million in the next budget. And the routine maintenance biennializes to $16 million. And having served in your position on your committee for a number of years and stuff, you'll remember, I believe 2 years ago, we shifted all of this onto the school foundation program account. And so you add these and you biennialize these numbers now, and you look out, in 2 biennial, the school foundation program account is broke. And so I do think we need to address this issue of major maintenance. I do think there's an opportunity to address some of this stuff. My real concern is the way the bill's structured. This becomes biennialized, and it's just absolutely in the formula as we go forward. And so it's a big chunk of money going forward. And when I look at that long-term forecast, I say, where's it going to come from? Because the school foundation program, for all effectual, will be running at a deficit within 2 biennium sections. So again, I would encourage you to look at something. Again, I thought we had the latitude to go ahead and do this as a one-time appropriation. We're going into recalibration. We can relook at some of this stuff at that point in time. But Mr. Chairman, there is no doubt that the picture that Senator Landon laid out, we need to up our major maintenance. The question I have right now, we can do something. I'm worried about biennializing this number and getting out there, and then what's the implications of that? I think that's a broader discussion, but thank you. And I do thank my chairman for doing such a wonderful job. He's had a number of opportunities to school on me for the last couple of years on this, and he does a wonderful job, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Director, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Del McCombie, Director for the State Construction Department. Again, I didn't hear the whole conversation that was presented, but a little background as to kind of the genesis of the bill itself. So when I came back as director, one of the things that I was concerned about was, ultimately trying to extend the life cycle of our buildings across the state. The chairman may have talked a little bit about previous studies that were done, and generally, so this was well thought out, and from the consultant's review and previous actions by the select committee back in this 17-18 timeframe. You get a little bit of time. When I retired in 2000, you get a little bit of time to think back on things you woulda, coulda, shoulda done when you were director. And so when we came back, I thought this was another opportunity to try and readdress that increase in major maintenance, again, to extend the life of the bill. It ties into a greater review, I think, of buildings and what my thoughts are in dealing with building construction and longevity in the future. So there is a House bill out there that's going to deal with a strategic plan for the state. And that includes the school buildings, all capital construction buildings, buildings for the University of Wyoming and for the community colleges that will tie into this. There's a common definition of major maintenance and preventive routine maintenance within that bill that you'll see, I think, hopefully moving forward. And so this kind of ties back into that, and looking at the long-term savings of over $3 billion. And that accounts for the extra spending in major maintenance versus the actual capital construction costs that would be projected by the underfunding of major maintenance on just the school side, not this entire state portfolio, but just on the school side. It's one of those things that, again, I thought would be judicious to bring to the select committee. They graciously took that on for another study and review this summer, and the results of that are the bill that's here. And so it mirrors what the consultant looked at in the past as far as the percentages and those sort of things. So with that, Mr. Chairman, again, not hearing the total conversation, but certainly stand for any questions the committee might have.
Senator Grew?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, we were talking, and you did hear a part come up, the business about, this number just becoming biennialized and just getting baked into the standard budget. With all the, things you and I have talked about, the proposition of having the state take over these buildings and take over the major maintenance. When we build a school, we own it. It's not the way it happens now. It's turned over to the school district, but that's an idea that I think has some merit. The good senator does bring up, we're going to do recal next year. And so what about just putting this as a one-time expense, and then I know it's kicking the can down the road a little bit, but as an interim topic, these folks are all there and talk about some of these new ideas and some of these bills that come through, and then maybe have a little bit of guidance from the legislature. What are your thoughts? Or am I just pipe dreaming?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, certainly, long-term is best, because again, it comes back to what the consultants provided for us. But if it comes down to losing the bill in total or one-time funding and coming back and looking at that, again, I would certainly be in favor of that also. That's another stimulus that we can put out there for major maintenance. One of the things that we talked about and presented during the select committee was component funding, for example. And the way we looked at component funding, so if you're not familiar, so a component funded project is similar to a major maintenance project, but it's really one of those things that is a larger ask than a typical project. That's not to say that they can't use major maintenance, say for a roof or HVAC, they do. But in component funding, what we look at is the amount of major maintenance dollars that are available to a district versus what their needs are. And with our new facility condition assessment and the individual, what we call FCI, facility condition indexes on individual buildings, we now have the ability to project 20 years in the future as to when, and try and forecast when these big dollars are coming available. So what we did this year for component funding is we looked at about 7 different categories. So we took all of the buildings, and that includes non-educational buildings that a district has to look at, and how much major maintenance funding is available versus, and we looked 3 years out, so we looked at how much they have now, how much they'd receive over the next 3 years versus those components that are coming up. Then we broke that down to educational buildings and so forth. And so what we finally arrived at for our component funding this year was looking at educational buildings and those things within the forecast, such as a roof or an HVAC or a boiler system or sewer system that is coming up, that if it broke, then you have the ability to shut down the school during the school year. And we looked at that versus how much money they have available to fix that. And there were some districts that it would be, they'd almost have to use all of their major maintenance money or more, and to be able to do that. And that's how we prioritized our component projects. So again, I think coming back to the question, kind of a roundabout answer, but coming back to the question, there are districts out there that when you look at all their buildings have 400% more forecasted needs in the next 3 years than they have major maintenance available. So certainly a one-time funding for major maintenance to try and take that backlog back down would be very helpful.
On the same token, though, if you don't biannualize it with that big of a backlog, you could force some programs to get forced back, which would then just add to the expense, which you might lose any savings you might get in the short term anyway.
That's correct, yes.
That's the argument, okay.
Senator Driscoll?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. On the 10% that they get a flex spend on, is that included in this as well?
I don't know if they have a 10% flex, Mr. Chairman. So there has been 10%, a couple of carve-outs for 10% over the years. One of those was for safety, for school security funding. There was 10% carve-out that they could use on enhancements for their buildings because we
Mr. Chairman,
don't.
that's what is this included in this?
Yes, that would, all this funding would fall under those same categories we currently allow for.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
thank you, because it'd save us 7.6 million just to make it where they didn't use it for enhancements. If we're actually trying to preserve and save a building, why are we giving them 10% to create something that we're gonna have to maintain more of?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Yes.
So they can't spend that 10% on an enhancement, a new enhancement. What it allows them to do is spend 10% of their major maintenance for areas within the building that are an enhancement already. So right now, their regular major maintenance, they cannot spend on any enhancements. Kind of the breakdown, so you have old enhancements and you have new enhancements. So let's take Laramie, the new Laramie High School that was built, and I think it came on in about 17 or 18 when I was first director previously. The district added a number of enhancements to that building, but within that, they set up a fund to pay to maintain that building for those enhancements. And that's typically what is happening on newer enhancements for school buildings. But prior to the Campbell, there was a lot of what we would term enhancements to buildings under the existing ones. Then the state came in, took over the program because of the Campbell rulings. And so there are some buildings that an enhancement was pre-existing to that occurring. So they typically use that also. Now, that's not to say they couldn't use some of their 10% to also help on the other, but again, in Laramie, I know, for example, they did set up that enhancement to help fund those in the future.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Driscoll?
Yeah, I love the sinking funds. I think that makes great sense. What doesn't make sense to me is you build a new swimming pool and then you're taking 10% of our tax dollars off of the maintenance so that you can do what you promised that you were going to do and you built it. So I'll probably take a look at an amendment on that.
Other questions? Senator Smith?
I think that where I'm at on this, Senator Hicks, you struck a chord with me. I think we have to pass along something this year, but I'm not for passing anything beyond this year. We have recalibration coming up. There's too many things I don't know. I think nobody knows. Senator Landon, you definitely know this well. You sold it well. Just that's where I'm at. As I'll vote for a 1-year stopgap on this.
Other questions? Other questions? Anyone else want to address the bill? Anyone? Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, if
Yes,
there's one other, when this bill was presented to the Education, Senate Education, WDE was not able to be there and present at the time, so they asked me to talk about the bill. There is also a $5.5 million additional in the bill for routine maintenance, and where that comes about from is in that calculation of going from 115% to 135%. And that percentage is how the WDE calculates their routine maintenance formula overall. So that allows more square footage to be accounted for. And so when that's accounted for, that resulted in a $5.5 million increase also to routine maintenance. So I think if you're going to address it on a yearly basis or whatever, you might want to look at the same thing on that side.
Senator Landon?
So just a
Chairman.
final thought, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to visit about this policy consideration. We knew this was a tough lift and appreciated Senator Hicks sharing with you, some of the dialogue, debate we had during the interim. It's a lift, but it is there, and it's always going to be there, and how we take care of these buildings directly relates to how long they're gonna last. And one thing we found out, especially these last 5 years, is, boy, we don't wanna have to be building very many brand-new ones, because look what's happening. We're up to $400 to $500 per square foot to build a new one out there. So that's why I felt compelled to get this to the legislature, so that we can get it on our radar screen. Whatever we can do is gonna go right to where the Director of Construction just indicated, and that is to a myriad of needs out across there. We can certainly talk about that enhancement piece, and a lot of times that's not extra square footage. Enhancements can be different sorts of things that districts try to do specific to their needs. The bottom line is, we've got a lot of major maintenance needs out there, folks, so thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Landon. Okay, anyone else? Okay, appreciate it. Appreciate it. No one else wishes to comment. I will close public comment, and it is a lift. What's the pleasure of the committee?
Second.
Second, move the bill. Any discussion on this? Any discussion? Senator Guru.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, or Ms. Vice President. Everybody knows the need, and, we're talking about a lot of different things here, and I'm trying to balance, for me on this one, I'm trying to balance, a guy trying to get a vote. And, we haven't been together as a group for very long, but just in the few hours that we've spent together in voting, I got a sneaking hunch that if we try to shoot for the biennialized number, it's gonna go down like the Titanic without a band. And so the question now becomes, you wanna shoot high and lose everything, or do you wanna try to get half a loaf and come back and fight another day? And give the new members of this committee a chance to really get into the discussions that we've been having for a number of years. Both our esteemed senators are exactly right. We have been talking about it a long time, and we haven't been real good at fixing it, but we've been good at talking about it. So, I'm waiting to hear a motion as far as I move the bill, but if we're moving a motion to cut it to a one-time deal, I'm amenable.
Let me recognize Senator Driscoll.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'm going to move to amend as it comes. If there's more discussion, it's fine, but I'll move to amend to, and it'll be a two-piece motion that's divisible, to move the $38,100,000 to a one-year appropriation on it. And the second one is on the division is to cut the $5,500,000 to zero.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
Second that, Mr. Chair.
Second. Discussion. Senator Larson.
Mr. Chairman, I was going to make the same motion. I think one of them's on page 6, but I guess the intent we know. I'm good for it.
Senator Guru.
Did you divide that into two pieces? Because I sure would like to.
Mr. Chairman, yes, I've made it where it was divisible as Division 1, Division 2. Division 1's the 1 year, Division 2
Is the
would be
five come to zero.
5.5 rid of it, and I did it intentionally because I knew the second half was going to be a little.
So Division 1 is the 34.
Division 1's
That's the 1 year.
38 million. that
Or
makes-
38.
1 year.
Went down now.
If you want to divide, have at it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
No, he did.
Okay, so Division 1 is the 38 million in 1 year. Senator Larson?
No. Question.
Question. Okay, we're voting on Division 1. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Carried. Division 2 is moving it from,
I think he did. I think he's got it.
moving it from 5 million, what was it? To zero. To zero. Any discussion? Senator Guru.
So on and against Division 2, I'd like to see us keep this 5 million in, and if we do, I'd make it for the 1 year, but I'd like to see us keep it in. Because this is a big lift, and making the lift smaller to zero, I think is, I understand the logic, but I think it's ill-conceived. And so I would like to see us approve the 5 million for a year and then bring the whole discussion forward. And that's my rationale.
Okay, other discussion? Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair, just.
Senator Smith.
A vote in the affirmative is a vote to remove the 5.5 million?
Correct.
Okay.
So with that, all those in favor of Division 2, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? No. The chair recognizes 3-2. Passes. Back on the bill.
Mr. Chairman, one more
Senator Driscoll.
comment to amendments.
Yes.
I and staff will have to draft this up, but it would be no of the additional monies go towards new enhancements. I'm happy, we got to take that break, but I'd just soon the money didn't go to enhancements that were self-inflicted by districts. If they were there prior to the state, I'm fine, but if they were prior, I would be a no. Thank you.
So is that an amendment?
It is, it's amendment.
Is there
No. Mr. Chairman.
Senator Driscoll finished the motion?
That is.
Okay, and then Senator Grew.
I'm just wondering, can we do that? We're just voting on the money itself, now we're telling them where the
I think you're correct. You're correct. I'll withdraw the motion. I'll withdraw.
Senator Hicks, did you have a thought?
Yeah, you're good. I was making.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think you got the gist of it. You know, on the Appropriations Committee, you can only deal with the appropriation. You can't start doing substantive amendments to the bill. And you know, just, I think that's consistent with what Senator Greer was trying to get at.
Okay,
I can't say I didn't try.
I know. Okay, with that, any other amendments before we vote on the bill? Any other amendments? Okay, roll call vote on Senate File 34.
Mr. Chairman, before I call the roll call, I'd like to confer with one of the senators to make sure the amendments are correct.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Senator Driscoll. Aye. Senator Grew.
Aye.
Senator Larson.
Aye.
Senator Smith.
Aye.
And Chairman Salzar.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, you have 5 ayes on an amended bill.
Okay, and I think that, is there anything else on our, Senator Driscoll?
Mr. Chairman, just a recommendation that we, as a committee, make a recommendation to the floor that only bills referred that have actual appropriations in them, so we don't, because basically every single bill affects the budget in some way. We're going to be buried here.
Absolutely agree.
So-
And yeah, and in addition, maybe either if the chairman wants to do it or wants to ask one or two of the members to go up and just have a little chat upstairs with our LSO folks about, you know, I'm sure this has come up before, but just want to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing and how we're supposed to be doing
And I completely agree, and Senator Driscoll and Senator Guru should have that. And I will also be talking to the president with regard to referrals.
Okay.
So,
Mr. Chairman, I'd suggest maybe we ask LSO staff, and I think they'll do it, to kind of make a note on these bills for which ones they think have referrals, because where there's a lot of us that are green, myself included, that they can put a red sticker on it that says you ought to be referring it, because we missed some on the floor as well, and I think it'd be pretty easy for them in the draft and to do that for us.
thank you,
if it's
Senator
not a
Driscoll.
problem.
That's an excellent idea. Linda, is there anything else on the agenda? Okay, with that, I will adjourn the meeting.
Thanks.